American intelligence authorities indicate North Korea is utilizing some sleight of hand to deceive the United States when it comes to ending its nuclear program. Democrats pin their hopes on 2 Republican women in the Senate to block the president's Supreme Court pick, and Senator Chuck Grassley raised his own questions about the power of the executive when it comes to trade. All things to talk about this morning with former Rock Island Mayor Mark Schwiebert, a Democrat, and Iowa Republican Party Chair Jeff Kaufman. Always great to see you both, and thanks for being here, by the way.
Good to be here.
Good to be here.
So Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa thinks the president has too much power when it comes to trade deals. Farmers and manufacturing companies are feeling the pinch from the back and forth on these tariffs. Grassley blames Congress for giving the executive branch too much power in the 1960s. Is Grassley right? And what, if anything, should be done about it? And is trade the only concern regarding executive power? I'll start with you, Jeff.
I was driving up here from eastern Iowa, just talked to Senator Grassley, and asked him about his stance. And
Tell him to come to western Iowa so I can talk to him.
Well, is that what you call eastern or western Illinois?
Oh.
No, I asked him, and he said, he mentioned specifically the 1963 law and then the 1974 law. Is he
right, and should anything be done about it?
I think we need to look at that. I don't know that right now is the right time when you've got the commander-in-chief negotiating, but I definitely think that it's constant in American politics to look at the executive branch balance with the legislative branch, and I would argue that the timing may not be the best right now, but I think it's a very fair topic to look at. Absolutely.
Mark?
Well, I think that the whole subject really has kind of been focused on because we have a president that has been citing this as a national security issue. And I don't know that Congress is going to be in a position that they're going to be substantially inclined to reduce the president's ability to define what's national security. Now, how it affects our national security when we're dealing with trade issues with Germany, one of our longest standing allies, Canada, one of our strongest allies and neighbors to the north, those things have been cited by the president, and I think that's a little fuzzy. But I do think it illustrates the problem we have when we have a kind of a loose cannon of a president who's doing things that are now affecting Iowa farmers, are going to affect manufacturing jobs in Illinois and throughout the Midwest, because it's initiating a trade war. And I don't think any of us disagree the Chinese have been engaged in some unfair practices, but probably the strategic way of dealing with that is by working with our allies instead of fighting our allies, so that we're standing with a unified front against China instead of picking 2 fronts, a trade war with the Europeans and a trade war with the Chinese, which is just going to get the U.S. caught in the middle.
Just a quick yes or no question. Has Congress just abdicated too much power to the executive over the last decades?
I think you could probably make an argument that that's the case. At the same time, having said that, I recognize I'm enough of a student of history to recognize that in a complex world, it's necessary for us to have a strong executive to make the kinds of decisions that need to be made in short time.
All right, you're nodding yes. Well,
I'm an old legislator. I think we need to take a look at it.
All right. Democrats are pinning their hopes on 2 Senate Republicans to try to force the president's hands on the next Supreme Court nomination. They're courting Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, trying to convince them to hold the line on justice who will uphold Roe versus Wade. Now, it looks like the president can't afford to lose a vote if John McCain doesn't show up for a vote. Now, how likely is this tactic to work? And don't the Republicans just outsmart the Democrats at every turn politically, Mark?
It's been a rough few years, I'll be honest with you. I think there were some real miscalculations in the 2016 election, although that was decided by the Electoral College, not by the popular vote. Donald Trump lost by 3 million votes, but he's still president because that's the way our constitutional system works. I do think it's going to be a tough one because both Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, the 2 Republican senators who are very strong on women's right to choose, are going to face enormous pressure to toe the line with the party. But if they really believe in that woman's right to choose, hopefully they'll stand up, and we'll make sure that whoever is appointed to the Supreme Court is someone who takes a balanced view on women's rights as well as the rights that we have concerning life.
We've been down this road before, essentially, with pressure on these 2 women, but the Republicans usually get their way with them, don't they?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think there's any absolute that we're going to get a Supreme Court nominee to definitively say this is how I'm going to rule. Judge Gorsuch did not definitively say how he would rule on a particular case coming up.
Well, they all do that. That's sort of part of the process, but there is usually indication when you look at their past rulings.
Agreed. The other thing I would bring up is if Roe versus Wade is overturned, the abortion fight has just begun. It then moves to 50 state capitals. If Roe versus Wade is overturned, then it becomes a state issue, and then the fight is magnified in Illinois and Iowa, et cetera. So an overturning of Roe versus Wade doesn't necessarily mean that abortions are going to be illegal in Illinois or illegal in Iowa. It then depends on those state legislatures. So this is the beginning of a long, long fight.
Well, we've seen those legislatures acting already. We've seen President Trump soften his stance regarding North Korea leading up to and after his summit with Kim Jong-un. That hasn't changed despite this week's revelations from American intelligence agencies that the communist country is advancing its nuclear ambitions. It is a far cry, though, from the bellicose language he used after his inauguration that threatened North Korea. So how concerned are you that the president is misjudging the nuclear situation, Jeff?
I mean, I think if this is real and there's going to be negotiation now to dismantle, to denuclearize North Korea, I think there has to be a change in the rhetoric. I'd quote my...
But is the president being fooled by North Korea's words versus their actions?
Oh, I don't think so. No, there'll be a trust but verify every single step of the way. He's surrounded himself with advisors that are in no way going to be fooled by this dictator. I just hope he follows through, the North Korean dictator, and does what he has promised, or what's going to happen is this whole thing is going to fall apart. But I don't think there's any chance whatsoever that the United States is going to be fooled by this guy.
Mark?
There is a problem with this president, and that is he likes to declare victory even when there isn't one. And I could see very easily this president choosing to declare victory even as he's giving ground to the North Koreans that shouldn't be given. I agree with Jeff that I think he's surrounded by people who've certainly been very hawkish in terms of the threat that North Korea poses, but I also recognize that Donald Trump had the biggest audience in history for his inauguration, even when the photographs illustrated that wasn't the case, made a great deal with the North Koreans and declared Kim Jong-un a great leader when before he had been Rocket Man. So we do have a tendency on the part of this president to be, shall we say, erratic. But even more so to sometimes declare victory when there isn't one. And that could be dangerous in this set of circumstances. Could it lead us down a path where we might give ground that shouldn't be given?
One more issue to get to. We don't have a lot of time. What do you know? EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt resigned this week. He was surrounded by scandals during his short tenure. Pruitt faces 16 official investigations. I'll only note a few of them against him: trying to get sweetheart deals for his wife, using secret email addresses, giving raises to his staff without the White House knowing, and renting a D.C. apartment at a very deep discount from a lobbyist. There was some travel issues, security, high-paid security as well. How did this take so long, Mark?
That's a good question. I think
I don't have a lot of time.
I think with any other president, he would have been gone 6 months ago. But again, we have a different sort of a president right now, and I think Scott Pruitt just burned too many bridges. It's an interesting illustration, though. We heard about draining the swamp, and if you want to talk about a bottom crawler, Scott Pruitt's it. I mean, he hasn't done anything for the environment, and he's done an awful lot to enrich himself while being in office.
Quickly, Jeff, this took a long time. Considering any other administration, I think he makes a valid point that somebody like this would have been gone.
So, I don't know. I mean, the Obama administration was full of those bottom crawlers, and they remained the entire 8 years. So I think there could be an argument on any administration to protect the folks that they, not protect, but try to stay with the folks that they have appointed. I would say this about Pruitt: he was bad for the RFS, bad for ethanol. It's good for Iowa that he's gone.
All right, Jeff Kaufman, Mark Schreiber, great discussion.